Dan the Wheelman here to talk about the Ford Mustang. The Ford Mustang is one of the longest serving and most recognizable automotive nameplates of all time, and rightly so. Back in 1964, or 1964 and a half, whatever you want to call it, when the Mustang was first released, it was aimed at a younger buyer, one that wanted something different, something cooler than the Ford Galaxy wagons and sedans their parents had always driven. It was affordable, fun motoring for the masses. Since then, it's been called all sorts of things. It's been called a track star, it's been called a pony car, it's been called a muscle car, it's been called a movie star, it's been called Eleanor. And you have to think, with all these kind of shifting identities, how does Ford keep the Mustang nameplate fresh? Well, for starters, right now in North America, it's one of the only cars Ford actually sells. Everything else they do is SUVs, CUVs, and trucks, so there's that. But to show they weren't resting on their laurels back when they launched the current generation Mustang in 2015, they made a 4-cylinder turbocharged version available. It's the first time they'd done so since the SVO Mustang in the 80s, and it made 310 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, which was fine. Fast forward the clock 5 years later, and Ford has maybe not reinvented the wheel, but they've evolved the wheel for the Mustang once again by releasing not only the bonkers Shelby GT500 model, but also the vehicle I'm here to drive today, the Ford Mustang EcoBoost High Performance Edition. And its job is to show that even with half the cylinders of the most famous performance Mustangs, it can still get the job done. EcoBoost power, V8 power, hybrid power, grass power, hydrogen power. If you're sat in a Mustang, you have to know you're sat in a Mustang. And then the EcoBoost version, just like all the other Mustangs of this era, you definitely know you're in a Mustang. Deeply recessed gauges, though they are digital now, which I guess is somewhat less muscle car to some people, but that's fine. You got the oil pressure and boost pressure gauges atop the center stack here, the toggle switches down here, short throw shift lever. Love the 3-spoke wheel, although all these buttons added here are kind of annoying to me. I wish they were moved to stocks. They just make the wheel look too chunky. Nice kind of squared off corners on the two hoods here. This is an awesome interior. You sit low with your hands on the wheel, look out over that long hood ahead of you, you know you're in for a good time. No, it's not a mistake. I didn't forget that I used this Michigan hat on my last video of the F-150. I'm wearing it again because, like the F-150, this Ford Mustang is one of the most legendary Fords of all time. It's probably the most legendary Ford of all time, I guess. It's just been so successful in so many ways, on the track, in movies, on the sales front. The nameplate's been running. It's might be the third longest running nameplate in the world, I want to say, next to the Chevy Suburban and maybe at one point the VW Beetle, but now I guess the VW Beetle's no longer, so it might be the second longest running nameplate. I'm not sure, but it's just such a great and famous car, and it comes out of Flat Rock, Michigan, which, like the Rouge plant where the F-150 comes out of, it's about 50 minutes down the 94 Interstate 94 from Ann Arbor, where the Michigan Wolverines play their, football, hockey, and so on. So Michigan had again, plus the gold M kind of matches the orangish interior or exterior I've got here too. Anyway, so this marks the first time, when the EcoBoost engine came out in 2015, it was the first time we'd seen a 4-cylinder motor in a Mustang since the SVO model of, which I believe was sold between 84 and 86. That was the old Fox body style Mustang, and it had a turbo 4-cylinder as well. But when we talk about power, forget about it. Forget the SVO. The GT of that era made somewhere in around 275 horsepower with its V8 engine. This makes 330 horsepower, which means it makes 50% more power with 50% less cylinders than did, if my math is correct, than did the GT of the era of when we last saw a turbocharged Mustang. So this is a very quick car, especially now we've got the performance pack, which is new for 2020 actually, and it adds, amongst other things, it gives you more power. The standard EcoBoost engine makes 310 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. I believe this makes 330 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. And even though it does use the engine from the no longer, rest in peace, Ford Focus RS, even though it does do that, you still don't have quite the power that car did. That car had actually I think it had another 20 more horsepower over even what I'm getting here. But this is still a quick vehicle. It's really responsive, and so confident was Ford in the, kind of the driver engagement or the abilities of the 4-cylinder engine. It was when I attended the launch of the 2020 Ford Mustang Shelby GT500, which is the most powerful Mustang they've ever made. In fact, it's the most powerful production Ford they'd ever made, and that includes the GT supercar, or both the GT supercars. They brought one of these along, or a couple of these along, for us to try right alongside the GT500 to kind of see the two spectrums of the Ford kind of Mustang performance catalog. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to lie and say I was more impressed with the 4-cylinder than I was with the GT500. That car is bonkers. But this was a really fun drive. We were at Angels Crest Highway just outside of LA, which is a fantastic driving road, world famous, really good. And driving this car on that road was awesome. Along with the more power you get with the kind of the performance package with the 4-cylinder you get, which is a $6,200 option. You get tuned suspension, you get bigger stabilizer bars, you get bigger brakes, you get sticky Pirelli P0 Corsa 265 R19 tires, you get a quicker steering rack, adaptive suspension, you have a trunk lip spoiler as well. There is a lot of, the driving gloves. Let me just quickly backtrack there. Yes, I'm wearing these driving gloves, and say what you want about it, but I'll never forget the movie Drive, where Ryan Gosling's Driver, the only name the character ever had was Driver, drove a Mustang in a very overlooked car chase, actually, and he was wearing gloves just like this. So there you go. There's your reasoning right there. So moving on. So this, all that to say, all those kind of bits and pieces to say, this is a really good handling vehicle. It is darty, especially when I've got it in Sport Plus mode here. There is no Sport mode. It's just normal, Sport Plus, and then Race, and then Drag. There's also Snow, if you can believe it. Is incredibly darty. The steering is just like whip crack quick. There's like no dead zone here, which actually, admittedly, does make it a little bit tough on the highway. It's kind of nervous on the highway, but whatever. So I can always just flip this awesome toggle switch down here, which you would have seen in the other clips, and change the mode back to normal for the highway work. But why would I? I mean, this is so fun. It handles incredibly well. It's got so much grip, and the thing about the grip, I guess, is that those tires are so sticky, it's really hard to overwhelm them with only 330 horsepower. But still, though, unbelievable grip, fantastic response, and good throttle response too. I mean, when this engine was in the Ford RS, that was the beans. That was such a highlight of that car, and it was really all about the engine. I mean, it looked a bit different than the ST, the lower kind of spec ST model did to the RS, but it's really performed a lot better. And so they've kind of resurrected that engine. It's the same engine as it did before, and they put it in the hood of the Mustang, which actually was probably a pretty good move. Less of a good move though was this high performance 2.3 liter chassis badge I've got here and on my front fenders as well, which you would have seen in one of the earlier clips. I think that's a little bit kind of obtuse, so I'd do away with that if I can. But otherwise though, cool looking car, and it performs so well. I'm going to put it on my favorite little back row, which you've seen me drive on before, later on for this video, and get to see kind of the response and the sound it makes. Oh, by the way, it does, like the GT Mustang, the V8 powered one, it has adjustable exhaust too, so it's got a loud exhaust too, so at a quiet mode, as a matter of fact, so that's kind of cool. Actually, in fact, quiet mode is not even your stock mode. You have to activate quiet mode. It's loud mode from start. That's what the Mustang's all about, loud mode from start, so there you go. But yeah, so this is a Mustang worthy of the name for sure. But the question, of course, is going to become, and as I think more about it and so on and so forth, is can I live with a 4-cylinder Mustang, turbocharged or not? And that's the rub, as the bard might say. So it may not be the Angelus or Angeles or Angels or Crest, whatever it's called. It's one of those three pronunciations, I'm pretty sure, outside of LA. But this is still a wonderfully windy road that's been recently repaved, which is nice. That is great for this car. It's this Mustang EcoBoost high performance package is in its element here. Seriously, this is where this vehicle really shines. It is incredibly well dampered. The grip is exceptional for those Pirelli P0 tires. The steering is so responsive. You know, you've got that long nose slung out ahead of you there. You don't have this as heavy of an engine ahead of you there, so you've got really quick turn in and really good brakes too. It's got larger rotors, 4-piston calipers up front, so very good binders as well, which makes it more usable for track work too, which is nice if that's your kind of thing. But holy moly, does it handle these bends and berms well, this car. This is so fun here. This is really where it shines. Absolutely where it shines. I've got it in sport mode right now, which sorry, Sport Plus, right? There is no sport mode, right? And you got great, really tightens up the steering quite a lot. Incredible turn in there, as we mentioned before. Holds your line really well. No need to adjust through the turn like you do in other vehicles, because it's such a kind of directed steering rack, which is fantastic. Plus you can hear that wonderful sound, loud exhaust right now too. So this is a quick car through these bends, and it's really tailor-made for it. And I forgot to, and also I've got the 6-speed manual transmission here. There's a 10-speed auto as well, but I have to ask you, really, is that really what you want? Then again, if you're gonna get the 10-speed auto, this is the, oops, watch out for the bird. This is the probably the version of this car you'd get it in. You know, turbocharged motors tend to have a slightly narrower power band, so you might want more ratios to kind of get the most out of it. So maybe the 10-speed auto is good for that, but this manual is great. The clutch take-up is nice. The throw is wonderful. Clutch is lighter here than it is in the V8 GT version. The only thing I would ask though is I've got these wonderful gauges here that we talked about earlier, but there's no shift indicator on it telling me what gear I'm in. And I know that may be kind of like a rookie kind of thing to say, but when you're really kind of hoofing it on the track like this, you sometimes want to know kind of what gear you're at. So kind of wish I had that. This is in the track, so when you're hoofing it on a bendy road like this, you want to know what gear you're in. So I kind of wish I had that, but otherwise, really fun experience on this back road in the Mustang EcoBoost high performance package. So there is no doubt that the Ford Mustang EcoBoost with the high performance package is a ton of fun on a bendy B road like that. I don't question this car's abilities in that kind of scenario one iota. What I have a harder time with though is the fact that I can get a base GT coupe with its 460 horsepower, 420 pound-feet of torque V8 for less than it costs to get the 4-cylinder EcoBoost with the performance package. Now, of course, you don't get all the bells and whistles with the base GT you get with this. There are various packages, though, that you can add to the GT that'll get you similar features. Of course, at that point, your price starts to get into the stratosphere when it comes to the Mustang lineup. And if you want a car that's more tractable around town, this is the one for you. If you want one that's better on fuel, this is the one for you. But if you want power, it's got to be the GT, no doubt about it. And for me, I have a hard time spending more money for less cylinders. I feel like I'd buy that 4-cylinder and I'd pull up beside a GT at a stoplight and think to myself, man, maybe I should have just saved the money and gotten the V8. But that's me. Anyway, thank you for tuning into this video. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. No hard feelings if you don't. You can also follow me on Twitter @DanTheWheelman and on Instagram @DanTheWheelman as well. And please tune in next week when I'm in a bit of a kind of an eyebrow raiser of a car in the BMW X6 M50i crossover coupe SAV, whatever they call it thing. And I'm also in something else too. Is it? Yeah, right. I am in a very interesting and unique take on a pretty bog standard vanilla car that the manufacturer has sold millions of over the years. I'm not going to say any more than that. I don't want to give it away. You're going to have to tune in to find out. But this one is intriguing to me. This one has definitely piqued my interest for sure. So until then, sayonara.